Good morning, everybody. Like Jeanette said, I'm Sean. I'm the field technician here at the RSC, and I'm going to just keep going right along with this restoration project. So I'm going to try to not bore you with too much repeat information, but for people that have been here, you're going to get some anyway. So the goal of the project overall is to treat these invasive plant species. I'm looking mostly in the primary wetland habitat, so that would be like Thompson Circle and Thompson's Bay that we talked about, as well as Leo's Landing. And the neck of the peninsula. And so kind of after picked up from the way this project's going, Holly's team will go in and treat for the plants, Jen will go in and plant new plants, then I'll go in after all is said and done, and I'll monitor for fish species as well as amphibian species. And then we're going to use that as a measure of project success, because if you didn't have the animals there before, you've restored it back to native habitat, and now you have all your native species back, you could use that as a real measure for project success. So some of the study areas that I've looked at here, how they're spread out across the peninsula. The entrance wetlands right there on the neck of the peninsula, followed closely by Leo's Landing, which is right across from the Stull Interpretive Center, if you know where that is. The Marina Lake we also looked at. We've split into two subcategories, just the east side and the west side of that, as well as Thompson's Bay and Thompson's Circle out on the end. So these are the sites again, a little bit closer. You can see A there is the neck of the peninsula right across from the Beach 1 parking lot. B is Leo's Landing, right across from Stull with that feather. C and F, I kind of arranged them out of order just because C is the northern part, Thompson Circle, that's the Gull Point parking lot right there at the top of that picture. And then F is just the southern portion of that site. These are all set up to the same scale, so you can kind of see all of our monitoring sites for the animals are close. There's a few outliers in size, but they're pretty close in size to one another. So our amphibian monitoring, this is done primarily on audio recordings. We started this monitoring back in 2017 and we've continued it through this year. And we use a wildlife acoustic song meter SM4. All this is if you're familiar with a trail cam, it's a very similar piece of machinery. You can go in and set a scheduled time that you want to record. We use a bike lock to strap it to a tree, and if it's set to record, it'll do everything automatically for you. So what we'll do is we'll go out 3 nights a week, and I'll record from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And we have 2 separate recorders, so that's 8 hours of recording a night, 3 nights a week. As you can imagine, that's a very quick buildup of information to go through. I could probably be paid full time just to go through frog calls if I were listening to them. We do get to use the accompanying SongScope software, which is free with the purchase of a recorder. And what that allows you to do is create a spectrogram of your audio recordings, which is just a visualization of a sound's frequency over its duration. So it really allows you to rapidly analyze acoustic data visually. So you can see here on the left, that is an American bullfrog's call compared to a gray tree frog's call. They're very different visually. So without even having to listen to the recording, you can go through and figure out what species are present. A drawback of this is that I won't be able to get an actual count. Like I can't say, oh, there's 3 American bullfrogs there and only 1 gray tree frog. However, you can get a somewhat subjective idea of populations there, because you can see here, this is out of Thompson's Bay. This is a chorus of gray tree frogs with some spring peepers over top. So you can tell there's way more frogs making that signature than there is in the top individual signature. Fish monitoring, we've done primarily through fish seining. And if you're familiar with a seine, really in its simplest form, it's a net between 2 support posts that you'll drag through the water between 2 people. So every sample site that I've mentioned before, we'll sample twice a month from May through September. And we do anywhere from 2 to 10 transects per sampling event. A transect is just a pass with the net until we pick it up to see what we have in it. Depending on our site that we're in, we've developed all sorts of different techniques for seining, from just going along the shoreline and having people scare fish out of bushes, to doing crescent passes in deeper water and things like that. It just depends on the site and what's conductive for sampling. So then our fish are counted. We put them in a bucket right there that you can see. We'll count them all, and then we put them right back into the water. So our goal is to have no fish mortality when we're doing that. So, some of our sites, this is the Presque entrance wetlands. In 2017, when I started recording, I recorded 2 species. That was the American toad and the green frog, or no, American bullfrog, sorry. This year, I've recorded 5 species, so we've seen an increase in that. For seiming, this has been quite challenging. If you remember in Jen's photo, this is the site that had a lot of that European black alder that's dead, and high waters have been very high. So you can imagine trying to drag a net between 2 people through knee-high water with branches that are submerged. It just doesn't work. So the only thing we've really been able to find in this site are gobies, which are an invasive fish species. So not the best. However, we are working on some methods that I'll talk about later to improve kind of the sampling range that we're getting in there. So Leo's Landing, as Jen said, it's kind of one of our show ponies. A few years ago, it was all totally choked out by invasive plant species. And I guess in these locations, the 2 invasives that we're most concerned about are narrowleaf cattail and Phragmites. And I guess I should have touched on this earlier, but you might think like a non-native cattail compared to a native cattail, who cares if the cattail came from Asia or if it was originally here. The problem that we have with those is, like Jen said, the native cattail will make nice stands throughout a wetland, whereas the non-native narrowleaf cattail will just grow a total monoculture and choke everything out. And it grows so thick to the point that frogs and fish can't actually get in between the stalks of the plant. So that wetland is, aside from I believe a few species of bird, like red-winged blackbirds, not much can use that area. So once they've been cleared out, these fish can get back into those areas. So Leo's Landing was totally choked out with those plants a few years ago. Now it's great. So already in 2017, we were up to 4 species of amphibians, but now in 2019, we have an additional 2 for 6 species. Of most of the species for amphibians that I find on the park, this has all but 1. So very good. American bullfrogs, gray tree frogs, Fowler's toads, American toads, green frogs, and spring peepers. Fish surveys, we find a lot of bass in this location, banded killifish, as well as we found a few northern pike in this location. So the western end of the marina, kind of an interesting site, a woodland kind of right up to the water's edge. Amphibians, we found 3 in 2017 and an additional 3 by 2019. So we've doubled the amount that we found there over the years. And again, here we find a ton of bass in the marina. And we found other things there too. We found pike as well, but mostly a lot of bass, occasionally some gobies. The east side of the marina is where we'll find a few more gobies. This was a few years ago one of our go-to sites if we needed to have gobies. We were working on a stream project where we needed to collect some of those, so this was our go-to site. But I have to say, in the past few years, that has changed quite a bit. We found Johnny Darters here on several occasions, which we hadn't really found before last year, so that was kind of exciting to find. Still the occasional round goby, but not nearly as many as there were. And again, smallmouth bass and rock bass, we find a lot in this area. Amphibians, it's not been the best site. We only found 1 in 2017, or 3 in 2017, sorry, but we have found an additional species as the project has gone on. So that is still increasing. Thompson's Bay is my personal favorite site, just because I think it has the greatest diversity. You can see already in 2017 we were up to 5 species for amphibians, so they were already coming back into that area. And I don't want you to see that only 1 additional species by 2019 is not as much of a measure of success, because the amount of amphibians out there calling is incredible. I actually have had to turn the sensitivity of my microphone down because their choruses are so loud that you'll just hear cracks and pops if you have it on the default sensitivity for the microphone. We've also found an Iowa darter out there on 2 separate occasions, which was very exciting because those are a species of concern in Pennsylvania, as well as juvenile gar, which they're just cool fish to see. So site diversity by year. Every year we've seen in both fish and amphibians an increase in the amount of species that we've found. Northern leopard frogs, which are a species of concern in Pennsylvania as well, have been confirmed at both the entrance wetlands and the marina. However, I would like to try more visual, like literally catching frogs to confirm their locations. They call very early in the season, in March. and they'll sometimes head inland to call, so I don't always catch them in the recording sites that I choose. But even with fish diversity as well, we can't compare actual numbers just because some of our sampling methods and things like that. However, we have seen an increase in just overall diversity of those fish every year. And like I said, the increase of Johnny darters and Iowa darters, other fish that we really haven't seen in these areas before, has been very exciting. So moving forward, our monitoring is planned to continue through 2021. With any sort of monitoring project like this, it's important to continue monitoring for several years because there might be a recovery period after you go in and treat a bunch of plants and pull out whatever habitat might have been there that the species could use. You need to allow some time for that habitat to restore and really get an idea of what species are going to come back and use that area. Amphibian surveys, I would like to start recording in early March this year, just because several species like the northern leopard frog as well as the wood frog, as soon as snow starts melting, they come out and they start calling, which is kind of surprising to me. You don't think about frogs hopping around in March when there's still snow on the ground, but they're out there. Like I said, I would really like to confirm the presence of northern leopard frogs at more of the sites. I have been told by some people that know a bit more about frogs than me that they have seen them at all those sites, but I haven't been able to confirm it, so I would really like to go out there and be able to do that. And for some of those areas, like the entrance of the park for fishing, like I said, there's a lot of branches standing in waist-deep water, not conducted for a seine net. We have got hoop nets and pike nets that we're working on developing methods to set those out so we can leave them, maybe get more representative ideas of what fish populations are out there, because we're really not catching any of the larger fish that might be used in this area. We're only catching small minnows and things like that. So with that, shouts out to my project partners again. And does anybody have any questions for me?